welcome to the introductory workshop on Methane Roadmap Action Program of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. We have a 60-minute program today. I think it's going to be really quite interesting. I hope that we have a lot of engagement, particularly for the last half hour, which we've reserved for question and answers. We're going to begin with an opening video from Martina Otto, the head of the Climate and Clean Air Secretariat. She sends her regards, but is unfortunately unable to join us in person. Her video introductory message will be followed by a 10-minute presentation from me introducing the MRAP program and the Methane Action Plan template and the services that the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is providing to support Global Methane Pledge implementation and success. This will be followed, I think, by a really exciting presentation from a good colleague, Kaarle Kupiainen, whose last name I've butchered, and I apologize for that. He's the Ministerial Advisor of the Ministry of Environment of Finland. He's actually going to be talking about Finland's new Methane Action Plan, recently finished, which was built using the Methane Action Plan template as a guide. So we have an exciting program today, and without further ado, I will share with you our video message from Martina Otto.
Be with you due to a mission, but I will be keenly engaged in the rollout of the...
Can people hear it now?
Hello, dear colleagues. Welcome to this workshop and the launch of the Methane Roadmap Development Action Program. I regret that I cannot be with you due to a mission, but I will be keenly engaged in the rollout of this program. I don't have to convince any of you of the importance of methane action. You're all deeply engaged in this. Your respective governments have signed onto the Global Methane Pledge, and action is underway everywhere. But I want to put this program into the context. And to state the obvious, the Global Methane Pledge got a lot of support and attention at the last COP. 1 year almost into its implementation, the roadmap development is a key to planning and unlocking the actions. The scale and pace of the action is of essence, and we all know that the sense of urgency as the window for limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees is closing in very quickly. There's also an urgency, as we will see from the baseline report that is coming out soon, that the trend goes in the wrong direction if we look at methane emissions. And this makes this program ever more important, and not only the program, but really the development of roadmaps. The program provides tools and is meant as a platform. Tools, for example, with the template for roadmap development, a platform for the peer-to-peer exchanges, as the learning from each other will allow us to go faster individually. We have built this program for all countries, while we also have deeper dives with the use of the CCAC trust funds for national consultants, means for roadmap development, as well as sector policies and actions. This program is structured along key pillars and will take us through data all the way to individual sectors. Please see yourselves as co-creators of this program to make it as useful a tool as possible and to meet the needs. And I'm now handing over to Nathan for more on the program. And I also want to thank Kaarle for the leap of faith to be the first to present your take on the roadmap. I wish you a very successful kickoff, and I look forward to a collaborative process that drives action quickly. Thank you.
Wonderful. Apologies for that initial technical difficulty. You'd think after so many years of living in a semi-virtual environment, we wouldn't have those problems anymore. Such is life. So let me, I want to run us through this very quickly. I realize that there's quite a bit in these slides, and if I give short thrift to any element of the program or the tools and services that the CCAC is providing in support of the program and the Global Methane Pledge, please use the Q&A to raise those points, and I'll be happy to cover them. But just as a short bit of introduction, playing off of Martina's opening, every country that joins the Global Methane Pledge commits to collaborate to achieve a global reduction of at least 30% of methane emissions below 2020 levels by 2030. None of these are national specific commitments. These are a common commitment to an aggregate global goal. But in addition to that commitment, which countries started committing to at COP26 last year, countries were encouraged to develop methane action plans and submit them. So one of the reasons I want to raise the issue of methane action plans is there is a lot of confusion out there, different terms that are being thrown around related to methane action plans, methane roadmaps, methane policies. And there's quite a bit of confusion about what the difference is between those different terms. And what I'd like to say up front is that we're not trying to, methane action plans and methane roadmaps mean something different, and roadmaps and action plans in general mean something different for every country, and some of them have very specific legal meanings. So for the purposes of the support that the CCAC provides, we are trying not to get hung up on the specific name of the product that we are supporting. The ambition here is to help countries with build capacity to identify existing commitments in their own countries to achieve methane mitigation and translate them into effective and rapid implementation plans. Whether you wish to call those a methane action plan or a methane roadmap, we will leave that up to the individual partners. But for the purposes of our program, we call it the title is the Methane Roadmap Action Program. The CCAC is one of the key implementers, the lead implementers of the Global Methane Pledge, along with the International Methane Emissions Observatory of the United Nations Environment Program and the Global Methane Initiative. We serve as the first point of call for GMP countries. This is why we are launching the MRAP program today. The intention with the MRAP program is that it serves as the main portal for GMP countries interested in really engaging with this topic, and serves as a means to very quickly engage with countries and connect them with the services and tools and larger community of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. The program objectives are numerous, but in short, first, the purpose here is to translate. We know that many countries, every country has some form of a commitment, whether committed internationally or through national legislation, subnational, municipal, or local commitments to reduce methane emissions. They're not often They're not always fully articulated as methane mitigation commitments. Sometimes they are aggregated with other greenhouse gas commitments, for example, in NDCs, or exist in a format that may not necessarily you would necessarily be able to identify them as a methane commitment. So the first purpose of this program is to help countries identify and translate the existing commitments and communicate them in a harmonized and consistent way that allows us as a community to understand national levels of ambition, but also the global, how those add up to a global level of ambition, and then translate that ambition into immediate and tangible action. In line with more than a decade of experience in the Climate and Clean Air Coalition with national planning and capacity building, we focus on building capacity within countries to identify their own priority actions and then implement them as quickly as possible. This process and indeed the entire process of the CCAC also focuses on a continual strengthening and of data, but also action and ambition. This is done primarily through engagement and action with our sectoral and national planning hubs, which I will talk about shortly. And then as well, using a consistent and harmonized methodology, following that process with individual countries, we should be able to quickly identify specific needs within the key components of the methane roadmap or action plans that will allow us to mobilize our resources, internal resources and external resources within the Climate and Clean Air Coalition to support strengthening and gap filling where needed and implementation more generally. So the methane roadmaps or action plans are built around the concept of building blocks. You should have received in the invitation to this event the Methane Action Plan template, which describes the 5 building blocks that we see as being fundamental to national planning. These are building blocks that we have distilled from this decade of national planning experience with governments all over the world. The purpose of the building blocks is not to dictate specific requirements to countries of what goes into a national plan. It is to identify the types of data, the types of analysis, commitments and targets and monitoring and reporting and verification commitments that are critical components of national planning, effective national planning, but don't necessarily look the same from country to country. So the purpose here isn't to have countries produce products that all look exactly the same. The purpose is is to support a process where countries can identify the common components of their national planning commitment and communicate those as roadmaps or action plans, but not necessarily to harmonize them from country to country in a way that makes them potentially not relevant or useful at a national level. I'm running a little over, so I'm actually going to jump over the rest of this description. I covered much of it in the previous slide. But if you look at that national planning template, you'll see that, as I said, we have 5 building blocks that we've identified as the key components of national planning. Building block 1 is identification and communication of inventories. This is our methane emissions inventories. Building block 2 is analytics. And that comes in a variety of different forms, but at its core is a certain threshold level of analysis of the mitigation potentials and options that can exist in a particular country. Building block 3, target setting, a critical component of national planning. Building block 4, establishing policies and measures to achieve those targets based on those analytics that were done in building block 2. And then building block 5, is having in place a process of monitoring, reporting, and verification in general for your entire mitigation commitment, but also specifically for methane. I should point out that in addition to those 5 building blocks, we believe in an effective and useful methane action plan. A roadmap also includes something that a description of national context. We decided not to make that a building block, so that's just the cherry on top of the stack of blocks. But it's useful to put in to communicate the context in which your government and country exists, the structure, the relevant authorities and institutions that manage major sources of methane emissions, and the driving purpose of the country to join the Global Methane Pledge and make this landmark commitment. Also, building block 3 and 4, it's particularly useful to consider breaking that down if you have that kind of data and level of analysis, but breaking down both the targets and identification of policy and measures into the 3 main methane emitting sectors. This is agriculture, fossil fuels, and waste. Those are the 3 primary methane emitting, human-driven methane emitting sectors globally, and make up about 95% of total methane emissions. So the program components, there are 3 components, and I'll start in a different order here. The first is that we will be rolling out a series of workshops around each of the 5 building blocks. These will be 90-minute virtual workshops that will include examples from champion countries that are doing a particularly good job on a particular element of the building blocks, and will walk participants through examples of the kind of data information, the tools and guidelines that exist to support really fleshing out a particular building block. These workshops will be developed into online training modules so that they can be used even by those who are unable to attend them. And we'll be rolling out these workshops in early 2023. The program is supported by what we are calling a Tiger team. These are our experts made up of the broader CCAC partnership and larger methane community. The Tiger team is involved in developing the guidance that you've already received in terms of the template, and will be developing the more detailed guidance for each of the individual modules. They will also be involved in leading expert consultations. The expert consultations are bespoke support that can be provided to countries that have a particular need or interest upon request to help them make progress either on a particular element of a building block or on a full economy-wide roadmap and implementation plan. So now I'd like to talk very quickly about the tools that are available right now to GMP countries, CCAC partners, and the general public. The CCAC has set up the Methane Technical Assistance Portal on our website. You can go there right now. It has all of our tools and resources to support for one, that you can download the Methane Roadmap Action Plan template from that site. It also includes general and sector specific guidelines and tools. If you want to go deeper into a particular sector or a particular building block, it's there that you can actually request these expert consultations. There's a portal there where you can make a specific request, and we will link you with members of the Tiger team and our broader expert community. It's there also you can request support for national planning and policy and regulatory support. You can apply. There's a link here at the bottom of the slides, and I think I saw a question early on in my presentation about whether or not I'm going to share this presentation. I will share this presentation immediately after this session closes, and then you will be able to access all of these links there. In addition to being able to having access to our entire resource library, being able to request specific expert consultation, national planning and policy and regulatory support, there are a number of tools that I think GMP partners would find particularly useful. One is there's an image here at the top right of the screen. This is our Global Methane Assessment web tool. This is something that we developed as a companion piece to the 2021 Global Methane Assessment published by the CCAC and UNEP. This web portal and tool allows you to look at all of the data that was used in our Global Methane Assessment and at a country level, be able to see what kind of mitigation potential, what different types of mitigation could do in terms of benefits or impacts globally and for your particular country. In addition to that, there's a new product that isn't 100% online yet, but it's going to be in the coming week or weeks. These are Global Methane Assessment country profiles. These are bespoke short profiles based on the Global Methane Assessment data. They are available on request from countries. We're not going to make these public unless specifically requested by approved by the country. But in these country profiles, we will provide specific national level data based on the Global Methane Assessment of the sources, mitigation options, costs and benefits of those mitigation options for an individual country. And you can make a request for, I will share a link at the end of this slide deck where you can make a request for that set of country profiles. I'm almost done here. Finally, a list of resources that are available also to partners to support. These are both financial and technical resources right now. One, the CCAC has a small scale expert assistance fund. This is a fund that ranges roughly from $30,000 to $50,000 small scale projects to support ODA eligible countries or governments. The subnational, national, or municipal and local governments within ODA eligible countries and regional economic integration organizations representing ODA eligible countries. This is a fast action, small scale expert assistance program. You can apply for it again through that methane portal and can be used to support more engagement and a higher level technical engagement around methane roadmaps and development of or expanding on particular elements of these building blocks. In addition, the CCAC has a country expression of interest process, which is underway right now, wherein our partner countries provide us with specific information about what their priorities are and funding needs are, capacity needs are over the coming year, and this is what we use to help guide our project funding process for the subsequent year. The EOI consultation process is open right now, and it closes on the 23rd of December. If you are a representative of a CCAC partner country and are interested in engaging in the EOI process, there's a contact email at the end of this slide deck. Finally, we provide significant support through our sectoral hubs. I've mentioned these a couple of times before. We have a national planning hub which supports national planning in countries for all short-lived climate pollutants, but is also supporting specifically the development of methane roadmaps. In addition to the National Planning Hub, we have sector-specific hubs. These are the agriculture, waste, and fossil fuel hubs these hubs are really where a lot of the work gets done in the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. And so part of the process, and that's where we do a lot of the peer-to-peer engagements and work through and share best practices and collaboration, develop projects, and enhance our collective ambition. So one of the key components of this MRAP program is to work with GMP countries to identify their needs and then feed them into the support structure that exists within the sectoral hubs for long-term engagement. I should point out finally that GMP partners who are not CCAC partners are eligible to receive funding support, but specifically for national methane roadmap development. If countries who are not CCAC partners wish to have access to sort of the broader range of support, financial support from the CCAC, then they will need to join the coalition to do that. So here's my final slide. Thank you all for listening to this presentation. For more information, you can visit our Methane Technical Assistance portal. We encourage you, for any country that is working on a methane action plan right now, we encourage you to submit those methane action plans when they are ready at the following email address: support@globalmethanepledge.org. If you have any questions or support requests that you would like to make, you can email us at the Secretariat at Climate and Clean Air Coalition, or you can email me directly with questions about the MRAP program. My email is here. And as I said before, I will share the slide deck at the conclusion of this webinar. Thank you very much. Now, I recognize I've run over time, so I'd like to jump immediately, Kaarle, to your presentation, and then over to question and answer.
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to give this speech and for the presentation and the introduction. We've just heard very impressive work that the CCAC is doing in this context. I'm Kaarle Kupiainen, a ministerial advisor from the Ministry of the Environment, Finland. I work in the climate negotiations more generally and in many of our international voluntary programs as well. And I serve as the point of contact for our international methane engagement. So I'm happy to give you some insight into our initial experiences for using the template for developing our first iteration of the Methane Action Plan, using indeed the CCAC and GMP material that we have received. You could go, Nathan, directly to slide 3. Thank you. So I will not be exhaustive, let's say, but and also, in the interest of time, I will really focus on the key building blocks and take some issues that we have experienced around there, and then of course I'm open for discussions and questions and so on if you wish. But let us start with the first slide. First of all, I have constructed this presentation so that in the slides you will see key elements of our national methane action plan, but I talk about the experiences, so bear with me of having these two elements at the same time. Of course, I'm happy to convey you then, if you wish, the actual action plan itself. It's open for everyone to see. Well, first of all, let me explain some background of our national climate policy planning system, which I think is very relevant in this context, and explaining why some of the aspects of the template have been considered, but also have not been considered. So I think this is important. You know, the methane-related targets and actions are included in our more general climate targets and climate-related policy instruments, and these operate across different sectors and greenhouse gases. And as you see in this slide, we have actually now an economy-wide target across sectors, across gases, to be climate neutral in 2035. And as of summer this year, this goal has also been embedded and written in law. So it is very strong instrument in itself. And another important general element of our policy work, regardless of which area of the environmental policy field it is is that Finland is one of the 27 member states of the European Union. And in case of methane, this means that Finland also implements relevant European Union legislation that is inclusive of methane or separately distinguishes methane, but it does not set a distinct methane-specific rule necessarily when it's very, very general, but then again, very methane-specific legislation might come from there. And we have some processes ongoing as we speak, which you see in the material eventually. But, you know, taking this context into account, so one of the challenges in compiling our National Methane Action Plan in the template relates actually what is the specificity of the separate methane-specific targets, actions, monitoring, reporting, and other relevant climate policies, and how to take them away from the more general planning systems we have. So there is quite a bit of things to do for us in the future, working with the next iterations of our Methane Action Plan that comes from that. Maybe one important general aspect still is that we have a very strong history and strong interministerial cooperation in developing in this kind of strategies and action plans. And that applies also to the Methane Action Plan. So in our case, the key ministries as we speak in the current government are the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, as well as the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment. So these are, of course, as you can imagine, the key ones looking after waste sector, agriculture sector, as well as the energy sector, which are key in our emissions. But I would like to mention in this context that we have also had separate projects, so more like project-oriented funding with our agencies and research institutes to support this policy planning. So we've had a very, let's say, big project supporting the general planning of the climate neutrality goal. But then again, we've had a smaller contract then with one of the research institutes in compiling the action plan. So I think these kind of structures are important in supporting the planning process. Okay, so if just to mention a few issues from this slide, maybe one explanation to understand this more general greenhouse gas and across sectors oriented planning is that, of course, that we have this national level plan, but also that methane in itself, if we look at the GVP 100 informed emission data, is 8% in the whole picture. So if you think across sectors, there are many, let's say, measures across the board that work towards this more general economy-wide climate target that might make it first, let's say, in the cost efficiency evaluation before we come to the methane. But this metric issue is a very interesting one, and I mention it at this stage because we have had some research project looking into different metrics and seeing how it evaluates the weight of the different gases across the different sectors. So this is very useful, but it is at this stage on a, let's say, more research level. So we haven't not gone through to evaluate all our plans with different metrics. Let's see how the future looks like in that sense. Okay, if you put then next slide, these are some evaluations. In the slides you see, first of all, the inventory since 1990 until this day, and in the next slide that I will ask then you to put later, you can still have this on. There we will have then the trajectory as it's calculated now in the most recent policy science support project that we've had. But first of all, no big thing about the current emissions or the historical emission evaluation. This is our UNFCCC national inventory, and this is how it looks like. So indeed, Finland has introduced a lot of measures in key sectors, particularly the waste sector, which has led to quite significant emission reductions already. So this is maybe interesting historical background to think about when we think about the future trajectory as well. But I think in this context, I haven't had the opportunity to look at the global methane assessments national data. So thank you for pointing that out, Nathan. I will definitely do that. And it is important to compare such data also from, let's say, more science-oriented processes, I think. Next slide, please. First of all, the emission data has been developed by government agencies and research institutes, so not only the plans themselves, but the whole emission calculation set. The projections or scenario work we have indeed funded in a separate project, because this, of course, is a very fundamental part of the policy planning system to understand where we are, but also where we could be going. And this is done in, as I mentioned before, in a multi-gas, multi-sector environment. And the analysis address, I say that they address also air pollutants and include black carbon, but not necessarily as a driver itself for the policies. So there are different processes for looking into the air pollution side that are more related to our air quality and air pollutant legislation. But this is important element of also our methane policy planning, and I think we mention it in our plan document. But these scenarios that I mentioned here, and also the air pollutant scenarios, they lay the basis for the policy strategy that eventually has led then to our development of the economy-wide target. Of course, our National Methane Action Plan then uses this information and compiles the methane-specific information from emissions as well as the measures into one document. But in a way, the background context is this more general national planning. So we, as I mentioned, maybe better to make it clear that we do not have a specified methane target in the political documents. It is, of course, embedded in the analysis of the scenario work that underlies the policy strategy. But this is something that we have not been able to report because we do not have such as a separate one. You see in the slide the scenario development under the existing policy measures. We have also a additional measures scenario, which I have not presented because it is currently under revision, but such exists and can be mined out from the background data, definitely. But it's not necessarily always that clear in the policy documents then how far actually some of these measures are going. So therefore, one has to be, I don't know, a bit careful, let's say, in looking at the additional measure scenarios. It's an indicative one, of course, showing the potential and having the background data, but still not necessarily carved in rock in that sense. Okay, next slide, please. I have more details about the scenario work. We have quite extensive reporting of that, also in English, not only in Finnish. That might be cryptic for many to endeavor in. But there is an energy system model underlying it, an economy-wide model, and it includes cost information and this issue, these kind of elements that have been asked by the template. However, we have not, at this first iteration, gone into studying this cost information, or let's say compiling this cost information in general, because sometimes the government works with packages of measures rather than individual measures. So it is not always straightforward to actually relate this technical information that, yes, underlies the research work, but still to compile that into a document that we have in front of us. But we will look into that also in the future if it's feasible. And I must say that we are not doing these big research project every year. So now we were sort of lucky because we revised just this year all of our key strategies when it comes to climate policies. But the next iteration will be during the next government, which probably takes office around the first half of next year. So it might take a few years until this whole machinery is launched again. So this is now something that definitely we have in place. It's fresh, but let's see then in the next iteration. Now, when it comes to the overall impact assessment of the whole thing, I think that was also a ask from the building blocks 2 and maybe 4 or 5 major government strategies, like I've discussed already. They all have to undergo a comprehensive impact assessment, and this is required by law. So in our case, the climate strategy as a whole is subject to such an assessment, and that has also been documented. We have a portal that lays out the different elements of that. But in the context of the Methane Action Plan, I would like to note that it individually has not undergone an impact assessment, but indeed the measures have gone through that. I think it's already 1:45. I have a lot of elements to discuss, but maybe we could go to questions and answers, or Nathan, how you would like to march this through. I mean, building block 3 and 4.
Why don't you take?
I haven't touched upon, so.
Why don't you take like 4 more minutes?
Okay, that's fine.
So I know you've got more slides. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I indeed have the sectoral slides. So in this, if you look at this is sort of building block 3 and 4 that I'm talking about, and the slides are also related to that. They are reviewing the sector-specific legislation that we have in place. It might not be very interesting for you in detailed level, but you see that we are covering many areas of the methane mitigation work also via the existing legislation, both from the EU, but also from our national legislation. But also we have always trying to make the policy stronger. So we have something in the pipeline as well. And I think these slides sort of give an overview on what is there still to try to squeeze more mitigation out. But the one important key at this stage of our future national methane work is to continue to implement the existing legislation, as well as implement the actions in the overall and the sector-specific strategies that we have in place. And I think this is quite strong because we have the overall economy-wide goal in law. So also the future government needs to do that, unless they want to go through the whole process of revising the goal. But I think this is something to bear in mind. Of course, remains to be seen how the methane measures make it, in the struggle between the different possible mitigation measures across the board, and how they make it in the let's say the cost evaluation side as well. But in the slides, you indeed see many future plans and future measures also taking into or presented. And Nathan, feel free to go to the next one, which is on energy. So for example, if you go to the next slide, please. In case of agriculture, let me take one area. We have the current government set also a sector-specific reduction goal, and that is 29%. For agriculture, but again, it is not specifying methane reduction specifically. It is an overall greenhouse gas emission reduction goal. So there are certain measures that can be done, but the efficacy of those remains to be seen. So and there might be some cheaper ones, let's say, in the pipeline. And this is something, of course, that we have to keep an eye on the methane side. But we have plans in the strategy documents in the agricultural sector that would then make those measures that we have planned would make them happen. So definitely, if they are in the strategies, they might they should move forward. Now, please, you can probably go to the next one that is already on the international cooperation, I think, or yes. So I mentioned already that the one important issue is that there is a clear division of labor, let's say, and a clear cooperation between the ministries that are in charge of the key sectors. And in our case, in case of methane, it works very well. We have in the overall greenhouse gas planning, we have an engagement plan, we have equity considerations and evaluation risks that have been embedded in the overarching climate plan, and that is now the medium-term climate change policy plan that was issued this year that I'm specifically talking about. But I think another important factor to mention here before I close is that we didn't start from scratch. So we have been engaged in international processes addressing methane for years already. So we were indeed one of the signatories to the Global Methane Pledge quite early in the process. We have been the partner of Climate and Clean Air Coalition since 2012. We have been partner of the Global Methane Initiative since 2008. And when it comes to reporting our measures and tracking our methane emission data, we have been working on the framework for action on black carbon and methane within the Arctic Council. So we have certain history of working with this kind of reporting. However, of course, the earlier reporting has been focused on very much on certain recommendations that have come from those policy processes. So this is a good new opportunity for us to compile the methane information from our policy documents and really focus. And I think having this process in place, I think it itself gives a momentum for us to revisit these measures regularly, not in the context of all greenhouse gases, but separately, and see the status and stage we're at, and keep working towards a stronger mitigation of methane. So I think in general, we very much support this process, and of course have supported and want to support CCAC's work also in this field in the future. So with these words, I thank you very much, and I'm happy to give the many insights we have into the template and future work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaarle. That was wonderful. And we're way over time now. It's almost entirely my fault, and I apologize for that. I want to jump directly into Q&A right now, but before I open it up, can I confirm with you that I can share the current version of your methane action plan with this group after the call?
Sure, and the slides if you wish.
Absolutely.
They should be. We try to coordinate so that they're the same. But yeah. Sorry, just joking.
Great. All right. Thank you. Okay. So questions and open either for myself or for Kaarle. The first hand up is from DNA PPC. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Yes. Hello. So this is Ali Hashem from Saudi Arabia, and we first want to thank you for all the efforts that you have done in the secretariats, and as well as the fantastic presentation delivered by our colleague from Finland. And so today we just want to emphasize on the importance of this pledge. The Kingdom has also joined the Global Methane Pledge and is part of different initiatives, which is something encouraged under the pledge. And so I really want to just mention that a question with regard to, this is now a pledge with 122 countries. This is major. And it includes a lot of countries from different parts of the world. And so when I look at the methane mitigation plans and the building blocks, I think that this is encouraged for countries to follow, and that this reflects that countries have different ways to achieve their goals, whether it's regard to methane or whether it's regard to other greenhouse gases. In this specific goal, it's for methane, of course. So as you know, with 122 countries, we're at different parts of our journey in reducing and removing greenhouse gases, with focus on methane here, of course. And so for targets, for example, this doesn't have to be quantitative targets. This could be qualitative targets, depending on how countries choose to achieve their goals within their the bigger umbrella, which would be the NDC here, that would encompass methane efforts. For example, implementation pathway. Here we see, for example, legislative, infrastructure, financing, incentives. So it's really across the board comprehensive actions on how to deal with this. This is reflected also in the pledge itself. This is to take a set of comprehensive actions by the country, but this is to be also nationally determined. You know, with 122 countries, you want to make sure that you reflect the approach of the Paris Agreement. This is emissions, not sources. This is, we understand that countries are at different parts of their journey. For example, in the Paris Agreement, we have coming differentiated responsibilities, respective capabilities. So this should also make sure to reflect the different needs of the different countries. And we would like, when I finish this question, for you to take us through how this was taken into consideration with 122 countries, calling on more countries to join. How was this taken into consideration in the development of this methane mitigation plans? I also want to take this opportunity to say that the Kingdom has done a lot of efforts in terms of methane, especially in the energy sector. But also I want to emphasize that we have the circular carbon economy for the Kingdom, which is an approach that was endorsed by the G20. In this approach, the Kingdom focuses on reducing, reusing, recycling, and removing GHG emissions, including methane. This was endorsed by the G20. Once again, we encourage other countries to look at it. This is the approach that the country will use, that Saudi Arabia will use to achieve its methane and other gases and other emission reduction through other sectors and other gases as well. So with that, I want to again thank you very much for all the efforts. Thank you for the amazing presentation. We think that these efforts are essential as part of reducing methane emissions around the world, and that this is a global goal that we aspire to achieve. And please just maybe the question again is to help us go through how the different, accommodating the different needs of the different countries. With 122 countries here, how was this accommodated in this plan? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First, for your interest and your participation and your membership in the Global Methane Pledge. It is really exciting to have 122 countries all working together on this commitment. Very quickly to answer your question, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition has been working on national planning and development for over a decade now. We've supported more than 30 countries with national planning process around short-lived climate pollutants. And have established a strong methodology for national planning and capacity building over that period of time, which is globally recognized, and is from that experience, countries at every level of development with very different emissions profiles. We've distilled from that experience these 5 core building blocks, and as you were saying, this is really about, or I should say, every country is doing something on methane, right? And has made commitments on methane, whether those are national commitments or international commitments through their NDC is just one example, right? But often the methane component of these commitments, if for example it's in terms of greenhouse gases, is not always well articulated. Maybe it doesn't even exist in a quantified sense. It could be a qualified commitment, but really the purpose here is to, drawing on that decade of experience, countries across the range of development and emissions experiences, is to allow the highest level of flexibility to take into account national circumstance and need, but also to give enough guidance and focus to allow countries to really draw out what their real methane commitments are. I think we always try to aim for quantified. We lead towards quantified commitments because it makes it easier to add them up. But we take countries where they are. That's the point. The point is to help countries articulate what their commitments are. from a variety of different forum and resources, and then help support rapid implementation of those. And those can come in any form. Kaarle?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the question for a colleague from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And yeah, I just would like to shortly maybe reiterate what I tried to convey in my long speech, that that we also took this template as a non-prescriptive structure to, let's say in our case, work through the first iteration of the National Action Plan, and which I tried to convey also in my speech is that we were not able to fulfill, definitely not tick all the boxes that are there. But we didn't think that this would be required at this stage, at least at all. So we were quite relaxed about that at this stage. Of course, in the future, we would like to look into the background data, background reports, background supporting projects, if we would like to report such information. But we too interpret it so that it's up to the countries to really use this as a very helpful, and it was very helpful template. But then see what is actually possible and what is, let's say, appropriate for us to report out. Thank you.
That's a really important point, Kaarle. And please, if anybody else has any questions, please raise your hands. But I do want to iterate on what you said. I don't think I was clear enough in my presentation, right? This is designed to be as non-prescriptive as possible. These building blocks are core elements, as we see it, of a national planning process, and we can iterate on those and constantly strengthen them. The purpose here isn't to get to perfection in the first round. That's never possible. It's to begin articulating around these 5 building blocks what countries' commitments are, and help them move into a process of implementation, or to speed existing processes of implementation. I will say also, identifying through this process a lack of data or information or a policy in a building block or a particular weakness is in some ways just as important as identifying a strength. Because through this process, if you identify that you have a particular, like you're missing, you have a particular weakness in a sector of your inventory around methane, like a waste sector, or you're missing a real strong analysis of mitigation potentials in a subsector of fossil fuels, we can translate that very quickly into an expert assistance project. Or we can connect you with our through peer-to-peer engagement or expert advisory service. We can connect you with experts to help fill that gap very quickly, right? So I really see through this process, identifying gaps are just as important as identifying, the commitments that currently exist, because that helps us to provide really targeted support to really see this Global Methane Pledge succeed. So we're 1 minute over. I'm more than happy to stay on. I'm not going to make any commitments on behalf of Kaarle, but since we ran over, I'm happy to take a couple more questions if there are some. As I said, though, this is a recorded session. We will make it available. We will share all of the presentations and the Finland's Methane Action Plan with this group immediately after the close of this call. Kaarle, our presentations were very comprehensive, so doesn't seem to be any questions. Well, with that then, again, I shared all of the contact emails and addresses at the concluding slide of my presentation. When you receive those, if you do have any additional questions, I really encourage you to reach out. We are here to provide service to this coalition, the Global Methane Pledge partners. All of the resources are on our webpage, and if you are representing a country that is working on a methane action plan, that is already developed a methane action plan, or very close to doing so, and we would like all GMP countries to submit those plans to our secretariat so we can record them officially through the the Global Methane Pledge email address, which was also included in my slide deck. We're really looking forward to those and looking forward to communicating methane progress at the upcoming COP. And with that, I think I will close this session. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.